to another episode of a Wild Time Podcast MMA edition. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you have not subscribed yet, go immediately and do it. Like the videos. We have hit a home run recently. We've had Fred Edish, Brad Kohler, Guy Mesger, and I am tickled to death to finally get the guest we got on here today. Once I announced this, everybody and their brother was like, dude, you have to immediately get it soon. And I'm like, listen, the guy trains, teaches. I mean, he's on the road all the time. I was like, I'm just thankful he actually gave us a little bit of time. But I'm extremely honored and privileged to have on here. He is a pioneer and legend of mixed martial arts. Been in several high-profile championship fights. He's a great coach and trainer. He's fighting out of Salt Lake City, Utah, 6'1", 185, but he will fight you at light heavyweight or heavyweight or any weight with a record, which Wikipedia says this, with a record of 120 and 22. They call him Gumby. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Horn, welcome to a Wild Time Podcast, dude. Thank you, and if anybody knew the issues we just went through, they'd be cracking up right now.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm good at punching people in the face. I'm not too technically sound.
But you know what, Jeremy? You're also good at not getting hit in the face. I was telling you earlier, man, I went back today as I was doing some, I just wanted to go back and check some videos out, and man, oh man, what a resume, dude. And look at you. I mean, still got a good, handsome face, and you fought the toughest of the toughest. You fought the GOATs. I mean, man, oh, I mean, and you give these dudes all they can handle. I watched Anderson Silva, your fight with him and Randy today, and I mean, those guys, I mean, you picked up Anderson and absolutely just give him one of the meanest suplexes. I don't know if you call it a suplex, a sidewalk slam maybe, but it was
something like that, yeah.
And you know, you got right in the clinch with Randy, man, delivering. I mean, you all dirty boxed. And the thing that I love so much about your game, dude, is you never came. You weren't a trash talker. I mean, you came in, you did your job, and you love the sport, man. You love the sport. You seem, from what I've gathered over the years, you seem to love to teach and coach. And,
yeah, very much so.
And that to me was being an amateur mixed martial artist myself. To see guys that you go into a gym with and they're above you and they will help you out, teach you. That means the world, man. So what's Jeremy Horn been up to lately?
Just like you said, I've just been running my gym in Sandy, Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, and just doing that, just training guys and teaching. So that's what I love to do. So that's pretty much all I do right now.
Says you were born and raised a Midwest kid from Omaha, Nebraska, dude. How was it like growing up?
I mean, just what you would expect from, you know, growing up in the middle of the cornfields, you know, just average Midwest life. And then I found martial arts when I was 12, and that never looked back. You know, it kind of hooked me, and that became the focus of my life.
What martial art did you discover first? Was it karate?
No, so it was a group that I was training with back then. It was a local group, and they were fairly eclectic. They did a little bit of everything: some kickboxing, some wrestling, some groundwork, some judo. They were kind of I don't know. They were a little bit of a catch-all group. It was called RBWI. Robert Bussey is the one that started that. I don't know. Some people know who that is. So I was training with a guy named Dave Jobin, and like I said, kind of the rest is history.
You know, around here, man. When mixed martial arts craze hit, which even when I was 10 years old, I was tuned in. We were renting the early UFCs from the local video stores, and not many people realized. A lot of people around here thought it was fake, thought it was pro wrestling.
Yeah.
And once me and my brothers got into it, man, we kind of followed it. Like when Food City would get a new one in, we'd be right down there getting them. So basically, around our area, if you wanted to get into mixed martial arts, the only thing around here was like karate. You know, Kung Fu. And I did that. When I first got in, I went over to Shane Hamilton's Kung Fu. He had like a Kung Fu Jiu-Jitsu kind of style. But I wanted to I was like, you know, this is cool. It's cool for kicks, cool for strikes, but kind of wanted to mix it up. So once the MMA craze hit in like 2004 or 5, I started branching off, finding boxing gyms, and kind of started anything I could find. Then we had Josh Depp. He's down here as a wrestler, state champ. So he was doing his thing, teaching, and it was hard. I mean, at first you basically had just karate gyms around where I lived.
Right. Yeah, that was pretty typical around the world. For the longest time, the martial arts stayed fairly separate, and kind of the taekwondo guys did their things in their tournaments, and the judo guys did their things in their tournaments, and everybody was kind of splintered. And then when the UFC rolled around, everybody kind of started realizing that they need to kind of rejoin, the martial arts as to what they used to be. And so everybody was suddenly discovering all these old techniques, all these old grappling techniques that we haven't seen for many, many, many years. Suddenly, karate's got groundwork, and judo's got striking, and suddenly everybody's trying to invent things that were not necessarily part of their base style to begin with.
And like you said, at 12 years old, it sounds like you got into kind of a mixed martial arts deal there. They were teaching a little bit of everything.
Yeah, they did a little bit of everything. There was a few guys out there that still kind of adhered to the mentality or the mindset of, kind of wanting to be prepared for a real self-defense scenario. And, that's what everybody says. That's what everybody martial arts says. But, if you're then going to refuse to acknowledge that somebody might tackle you, then you're not being true to yourself, right? I mean, you can say all you want, you can't take me down because I'll kick you in the head or whatever. But if you're not practicing that, you're missing out. There's no way to prove it. There's no way to verify that. As soon as somebody does do it, you're going to get thrown on your head.
So the first time you fought, man, where was it? I mean, had you went out with Pat Miletich yet, or was it kind of like your local guys training you, or?
Yeah, so I had some friends of mine that we were training together, and I honestly I don't even remember how I first got contacted, but it was just a local. I don't know if you'd call him a promoter or maybe like a talent finder or something. He just said, "Hey, I've got contacts. We're doing these fights down in Atlanta. If you're interested, we'll fly you out there and put you up in a hotel and then find you a fight." And they did, and that's pretty much all it was. I mean, they flew us down there. I didn't know who I was fighting. Excuse me. Until I saw him standing across the room from me. I didn't even know his name. They're like, "You're going to fight that guy. You guys are about the same size, so you guys are fighting each other." And that's kind of how they did it back then. No, there was no database, no internet to do some research on. It was just you guys. We didn't even get on scales. We're like, you guys look about the same size, so you're going to fight.
Man, it was wild how much things transitioned. I mean, you think back, and I was listening to a podcast today. Kurt Angle was interviewing Randy Couture, and they were talking. Randy was talking about how the game had changed, how regulations. They just get each time there was an event that you might see another new rule.
Yep.
Kurt Angle was like, "Man, I miss the old days." He said it was almost like more primal. He said,
"Yep,
more ruthless." But it goes to show you stayed. I mean, you started, Jeremy, really early in the game, and you got to witness all the new rules and weight divisions. And man, let me ask you something: was the Frank Shamrock fight your first fight in the UFC?
Yeah, that was my first fight in the UFC.
That's mind-boggling, man. Because you were winning that, and I'm a big Frank Shamrock fan also. And I went back and rewatched that fight, and you were dominant that fight until that, that one little mistake, like you said. I listened to some of your interviews, and you're like, just left the leg out. I think it was. He was it a knee bar? I think it was.
Yep.
And you just went on, and I think you rattled off 15 straight wins, like a few fights after that, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, for your first fight in the UFC, fighting for the title against Frank Shamrock, were you nervous?
Well, no, honestly, I wasn't. Because, I was fairly lucky in the way I found my way to that fight. Because normally, especially, and it's even kind of true today, if you get a fight in the UFC, you are being given a chance. Here's your fight. Now come up and prove that you belong here. You better win this fight, or at the very least, you better look spectacular. This is just a trial run, right? You're going to come up here, and we're going to see how you do. And if you lose or look bad, even winning, you're not going to get it. Well, back then, it was kind of the same thing, right? Everybody was aspiring to get to that level. And so when they called me, John Peretti was the matchmaker at the time. And he had been at a fight where I had won a 4-man tournament a couple of months before that, I think it was. And he called me and he said, "Hey, you're going to fight Frank Shamrock." And there was some some stuff going around backstage. They were swapping fights around and moving things around. And he's like, hey, you're going to fight Frank Shamrock for the title. I was like, all right, that's cool. So, but keep in mind, this was right after Frank had just fought Kevin Jackson and Igor Zinoviev. And he had just beat both of them in like 30 seconds each. And so I knew, I was like, yeah, well, I mean, they don't expect me to win. They're not bringing me in here to give me a chance, right? They're bringing me in here to fight Frank Shamrock. I know what the deal is. They're just, they're bringing me in so that he can beat somebody up and look good. So there's no pressure to win on my part.
You play on.
I know they didn't expect me to do it.
Yeah.
And then he had just, like I said, he had just beat Kevin and Igor in 30 seconds each. And I was like, well, I know there's no way he can do that to me. So they don't expect me to win. They don't really care if I win, but I know I can put up more of a fight than those two guys did. So fuck it. I got nothing to lose.
That's it.
So I really wasn't very nervous going into that fight. I thought, man, I guarantee I can last longer than 30 seconds.
You knew your showing was going to be better than the previous two guys, so it was a win.
Exactly. Yeah, and so and that was part of the reason the fight kind of went the way it did, because I never really got it in gear and started fighting. I was just constantly in shock that I was surviving as well as I did against Frank Shamrock.
Yeah.
Like that he comes in, he throws a kick at me, I grab his leg, I scoop him up and slam him, and now I'm on top of him, and I'm thinking in my head, okay, he didn't see that coming, he didn't expect it, but any minute, he's going to turn it on and he's going to beat me. And then I move to the mount, and he goes, okay, he got a little lazy, he didn't expect that, but any minute, he's going to turn it on and he's going to smoke me. 15 minutes later, I'm still going, okay, he didn't expect that one. He didn't see that one coming. But any minute, he's going to turn it on and he's going to smoke me. And I just never got it into my head that, like, hey, I'm better than this guy. I can beat him. Just get in gear and do it.
You're a really cerebral fighter, dude. I mean, I think you were ahead of the game and you didn't even realize it at the point. I mean, honestly, because
Thank you.
The thing that stood out to you, or stood out to me about you, was the way you were cool, calm, and collective out there. And your poker face, man. I mean, you always, no emotion. I mean, just out there, you never backed away. You stayed in the pocket, but you did a great job of playing defense. Always, man. Your stand-up was great defense. Like the Chuck fight today, I went back and watched the first two. The second one, man, was a good fight. You had moments. And that was probably prime Chuck Liddell. I don't know if anybody realizes it or not, but I mean, that third round, you probably won that round. I mean,
a lot of people have said that.
I mean, that was and like I said, that was prime Chuck, but you kept your composure, man, and the who's who, your resume is nuts. I mean, it's Anderson Silva. I mean, a lot of people consider him to be the greatest fighter of all time in mixed martial arts. Randy Couture, one of the top heavyweights of all time. Nogueira, Arona. I mean, if I kept going on, we'd be here till tomorrow. No joke. But your UFC run, man, the Chuck Liddell first fight, you put him to sleep. What was your thoughts on that? Was you real familiar with Chuck at the time?
No, honestly, I mean, really nobody was. I mean, he was just a kickboxer. I mean, I kind of knew who he was. I knew he was tough. I knew he was a dangerous striker. But yeah, I mean, again, there wasn't really a whole lot to be found back then. I think I'd seen one of his fights. He had fought Pele down in Brazil in a fight down there, and I remember watching that fight and thinking, okay, this guy's a fucking killer. I got my hands full here. I mean, I don't know, that kind of just gets into a different mentality for me, because I've never been one to really like try to study other opponents and look at, try to find, game plans and weaknesses and such. I figure I'm going to train everything to be as good as I possibly can. And then I'm going to go in there and try to take the fight where I am strongest, or maybe where my opponent's weakest. If I'm fighting a really, really good jiu-jitsu guy, I'm better at jiu-jitsu than I am at striking. But if my striking is way better than his, then I'm going to try to do that, But I've never been one to really, do a whole lot of homework and study people. I don't think there's much to be done. Solid technique, solid strategy, solid, movement and balance and position will drive you to a win. It's not about, I don't know, to me, a game plan this isn't quite a fair comparison, but like a game plan to me is almost like looking for a trick. I'm gonna try to pick out a flaw that you have or a weakness that you have that I can capitalize on. Well, what if you don't have any flaws or weaknesses? What if you don't drop your jab after you throw whatever? You know, what I mean, what if there is nothing? I have to be 100% as rock solid as I can and make sure that I can just guide you into a loss, whether you like it or not. So that's how I always approach fights.
You know, Chuck got into that when you latched on that arm triangle. I had never seen an arm triangle before. I don't think the announcers even knew.
Yeah,
They knew he was asleep at the point.
yeah, no. Well, honestly, none of us did. You know, going back and watching the fight again, you can kind of see because you can see his leg kind of go limp a little bit.
Yeah.
But none of us knew at the time. You know, I was on top of him. I was trying to pass his guard. I had good head position. He bridged and rolled me over, and he didn't really know what he was doing. He didn't know he's rolling into that choke. And I was throwing the choke on, and I knew the time was short, and he knew the time was short, and so did McCarthy, you know. And everybody's like, all right, you know, what's going to happen? We're going to get out of here. The round's going to run. And I thought, man, screw that. We're not going to another round. And I just squeezed as hard as I possibly could. And then when John, you know, split us up, Chuck was obviously trying to wait for the bell. John split us up, and I look over, and I go, oh, man, his eyes are wide open, and he's drooling. Like, he's out. So, yeah, you can see me on the video. I go, hey, he's out.
Yeah,
So,
it was like you were, you know, you're like shocked a little bit, kind of like.
Yeah.
I mean, even the announcer, everybody watching at the time, because arm triangles weren't that popular, you know, back then you had guillotines and an arm bar maybe, but that was another aspect of your jiu-jitsu game that you got to show in impressive fashion against one of the, he had a lot of steam behind him at that point also, man, which he was early on in his career, but still, I know you fought Jason Godsey, and, you know, you lost to him, but you also got to get revenge on him a few UFC later. You know, and that had to feel pretty good. Yeah,
definitely. My first fight with Jason, like, there was a point after, I think it was after my fight with Frank, or one of my first couple of fights in UFC, where I just decided that, despite the fact that I looked pretty calm, I was pretty nervous and I wasn't super confident, you know, and I just decided, man, the way to get over this is to fight as much as I possibly can. And Jason was one of those early fights where I was, you know, I mean, I was moving well and I had decent technique, but mentally I was not strong. You know, I was a little timid. I was a little shy, and I thought, man, I got to get over this. The best way to do it is I'm going to fight as much as I can. So I had like 30 or 40 fights in like 1 year, and I was like, okay, I'm done with that. So, that's the difference. You know, my first fight with Jason, pretty timid, pretty new. You know, my technique was about the same, I guess. Maybe I was probably better in the second fight, but the biggest difference was my mentality. In the first fight, he was a little bit bigger than me, a little bit stronger than me. He was able to get on top of me and pressure me and basically just make me panic and lose my composure a little bit until I rolled over and made a mistake, and he capitalized on it. He got my back and choked me. And then in the second fight, I was like, yep, I'm not going to do that. I'm calm now. I can work through this, and I can deal with whatever you do to me, and I'm just going to keep pushing until I catch something. And the arm lock I caught him in the second fight was a little on the weird side. It was kind of a Hail Mary, but it was there, and I saw it and I caught it. So,
you know, Jeremy, it's crazy to think, man. You said you fought 40 times maybe in 1 year. Nowadays, guys are lucky if they fight 3 times in a year. Is that not?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever really just sit around and thought about that? And you look pretty healthy too, man. You don't look like you suffered any bad damage or anything, or hung around the game too long. Like a lot of guys.
I'm pretty healthy. But, so the biggest difference was back then there were so many promoters doing fights. You know, the sport was exploding. Everybody wanted to fight. Everybody wanted to be a promoter. Like, it was just everywhere. So it was easy to get lots of fights. You know, everybody doing 8-man tournaments. So, I mean, it was common for me. I think it was 99 and maybe into early 2000 a bit, where, I mean, you could still, we would drive somewhere on Thursday night. I would fight in an 8-man tournament Friday night, get up Saturday morning, drive to the next place, and fight in another one that night. You know, so I mean, I'll pick up 6 fights in a weekend. You know, that kind of stuff happened more than once.
Man, that is, talk about some battles and test of wheels and endurance to be in those tournaments like that. I mean, they had the Grand Prix and stuff, but I mean, the tournament format was, nuts. Think about the dehydration fighters probably faced. You know, if you fight 1 or 2 times to get to the final, I mean, your body is really battling a lot of stuff other than bruises and. Yeah, I mean, mentality, your mental health. I mean, there's a lot to that. Guys back then, they had to be a little bit more mentally strong to stay in those hot arenas with no air conditioners, And
Or
they faced a different battle. I'll say that.
I was kind of lucky, I guess, because like my particular style was lent itself very well to tournaments. Because my style was, I'm not a real strong striker. I'm not gonna break my hands on people. Not trying to knock people out. I'm a technician and I'm a grappler. So it was much easier for me to get in and out of a fight without taking a scratch. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to smother you. I'm going to get on top of you. I'm going to make you turn your back, and I'm going to choke you. And it's not that big a deal. I didn't put that much energy into it. I didn't get hurt. I didn't get hit. I love tournaments. I wish they'd bring them back. Right up my alley.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe one day you get to promote your event and bring that back. That would be pretty cool.
Man, that'd be awesome. With the way everything is going, like, I don't know if that'll ever go that far, but like, at first MMA was way too brutal. It was it was the blood sport. People are going to die. We can't have this. And then it was, we can't have these guys fighting bare knuckle. What are these savages? They're going to kill each other. So they forced us to wear gloves. And now we're like, okay, now bare knuckle boxing is coming back in. Well, what's the difference?
It's almost like a throwback to the old UFC.
Absolutely it is. So if we can do bare knuckle boxing, and there have been studies that show there have been way less injuries in the bare knuckle boxing than in regular fights because the gloves add a lot of protection to you. You get superficial shit, people getting cut, maybe a broken nose, that kind of thing. But in terms of like serious concussive force and big damage, doesn't happen as much with the little gloves, or with no gloves rather. So yeah, I would love to go back to real MMA, no rules at all, but at least with no gloves. Because with no gloves, people can't just throw wild haymakers all the time. I can get a hold of people and choke them a little easier because my hands are have a little bit better dexterity. All that stuff benefits the grapplers for sure.
That was what I was going to say. There's got to be a way. The bare knuckle boxing, I mean, it's brutal enough. I just don't see why you can't make some sort of one time a year old school MMA tournament. I mean, I could be wrong or anything, but
yeah.
To move on a little bit, Jeremy, you went over to rings and fought, and that was, you fought the who's who over there. I mean, it looks like Coach Gordon, O'Gara, Rona, Sinisig. Was that where you fought? No, I'm jumping ahead. I was thinking of Gilbert Avell, but that was over in Pride. So you fought rings, Pride. You were doing it all. So
I'd fight anywhere that somebody'd have me.
Well, dude, 100, I can't see here. Close to 200 fights, everybody had you, it sounds like. So rings, how was it fighting those guys at the time?
It was fun. Rings was a really unique organization because they came from a real heavy pro wrestling background. So like their main focus was entertaining the fans. And initially, a lot of the early fights were fixes. They were works. Yeah. They were like pro wrestling, but they did it with kind of an MMA theme to it. So the guys were punching and kicking, and they were, but it was a predetermined outcome. But the guys that did it actually were legit martial artists. They had a lot of skill. And then when they started, blending into MMA, they kept that rule set, which I thought was pretty cool with the rope escapes and on the ground, grappling only, and on your feet you could strike with different weapons depending on what padding you chose to wear. But I thought that was pretty cool because it let people kind of lean into what they liked. The problem is, like when you go too much into winning a fight, sometimes the entertainment value goes down compared to like pro wrestling, right? You're not going to see high flying, acrobatic moves when it's going to make me tired. I want to take you down and mount you and punch you until you turn over, right? It's going to be a fairly, I say boring, but it's only boring for the people that don't know what they're watching, right?
And
it can be less energy, less entertaining.
You fought Randy Couture over there. Was that?
Yep.
Was that a pretty tough fight?
Oh yeah.
A lot of clinch fighting. It looked like.
It was. He did a good job in that fight, like he does in most of his fights. Like leaning on people, wearing them out, making them burn energy, and I did well in that fight. I think I took him down a couple of times. I landed a lot of shots. It was a pretty close fight. It's kind of funny. My manager, Monty Cox, tells this story. So Monty is actually the one that lost me that fight. So the way it used to be, like in Japanese organizations, they didn't really understand the scoring system well. So, you have 3 judges scoring the fight, and if one judge scored it for fighter A and 2 judges scored it a draw, they would give it to fighter A, when in reality that should be a majority draw.
Yeah.
Right? But they're like, okay, these guys can't decide. This guy thinks fighter A. We're going to give it to fighter A. And so Monty, because we would go over there a lot, Monty was helping them kind of connect to the U.S. and that kind of thing. So he's talking to the judge and he's like, look, guys, that's not how this works. If it goes two judges having a draw, that's a majority draw. You either call it a draw or if you want overtime or whatever. But this is how the scoring should work. So in my fight with Randy, that's exactly what happened. Two judges had it a draw. One judge gave it to me. But because Monty had explained to them how it worked, they're like, okay, majority draw. We go into overtime. And Randy won the overtime because he was in a bit better shape than me, pushed the pace a little bit more than me. But yeah, so Monty cost me that fight.
That's a pretty cool story about that. But you're right, man. It was a very close fight. I mean, could have went either way from what I watched. You had good single leg takedown on Randy, who's unbelievable wrestler. And then, you were striking with Anderson Silva over there. I mean, you were, I'd seen Rich Franklin in your corner over there also. Yep. It's crazy how those two would meet up later on.
Yeah, Rich and I were good friends. We trained together a lot back in the day. I'd go out there and he'd come out to Utah. We trained a lot together.
How did you get involved with Pat's team, man? Because you helped Matthews, you helped Tim Silva. You were one of the big coaches, I guess you would say.
Yeah. So my second and third fight, it was a 4-man tournament, so 2 fights. Monty was the promoter. So he did it in the Quad Cities, Iowa. At the time I was living in Omaha, it was 4 hours away. So we drove there to fight. And that's, Pat was the main event. A couple of his guys were in the different brackets and stuff. And Monty was the promoter. So I met him there and hit it off with him. And then I'm not sure, a couple of years, I would just drive to Iowa on the weekends and train with those guys for the weekend. And then after a couple of years, I was like, I'm sick of driving. I'm just going to move over there. So
where was that, Bettendorf, Iowa?
In the Quad Cities, yeah. His gym was in Bettendorf, but I bounced around a few different locations in the Quad Cities, but yeah.
Well, you go to Pride, and you racked up a 2-0 record there, undefeated in Pride, and you fought a heavyweight, Hurricane, Gilbert the Hurricane event. I mean, he's a heavy striker, too.
Yeah.
And let's see here, Akira, you also beat it. Was it?
Yep.
So 2-0 at Pride, Jeremy. What happens after Pride, man? Why didn't you stay over there as long?
Well, I would have, but I mean, obviously, Pride is, you've heard all the rumors of Pride, and I'm sure you've seen it, but they really favor fighters. Like, they don't care if you win or lose. They want to see you go in there and go out on your shield. They want to see those wars, and they don't really care who wins and loses. They want to see people go nuts and knock the shit out of each other, and that's just not my style.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in there to win the fight, and I try not to be boring, but I'm not going to go crazy stupid just to entertain the crowd at the expense of me maybe losing. So in both of those fights, I fought aggressively, and I fought to try to win. I tried to finish, but I couldn't because they're both tough guys. Yeah. And so in the end, they just, I just didn't have the style that they were looking for. I'm a little bit too conservative for them, so they just didn't re-sign my contract.
I'd interview the first guest I've had on my MMA edition show was Guy Mesger.
Yeah.
And poor guy, dude, he really had some controversial losses over there. I mean,
yes, he did.
I mean, it's a shame because that dude could be just heartbroken because there was a couple big name fighters over there that I think Sakuraba, I think he pretty much.
Yep. He should have won that fight. Yep.
Yeah. And
they kind of screwed him over there.
And he had a war with Liddell also over there and held his own with Chuck that first round. But guys, that was just a heartbreaker because I've heard several things like Pride's almost like a Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. So many myths and stories.
Yeah,
it's true, I'm assuming. But you make
a lot of it is. There was some shady connections in Pride, and I mean, like I said, to them it was still about entertainment. Yeah. It wasn't really about a competitive sport to find out who's the better fighter, although there was an element of that. Really, to them, it was, we want to be entertained, and we love fighting, and we love the warrior spirit and the warrior mentality, but really we want to be entertained. And that's one thing that made it awesome about fighting in Japan too, because like in America, it's getting better, but in America, if you lose, you suck. Nobody cares.
No.
Who came in second place in the Super Bowl? Right? Like, nobody gives a shit. You either win or you suck. But in Japan, they don't think about it that way. They love you because you are an athlete that is willing to compete for their entertainment. And so a lot of times after a fight, like the line for autographs is just as big for the guy that won as the guy that lost, because they don't care. They're like, look, you're climbing into the ring and you're willing to get your ass kicked for our entertainment, so we love you.
Well,
So it's
hey,
pretty
listen,
cool that way.
that's a different type of appreciation.
Absolutely, it is.
A man's got to respect that, because
Yeah.
if you're a fighter and you've got that warrior spirit, you feel that way anyways. You respect the opponent after, even if you go in there and you knock him out in 15 seconds, he had enough guts and testicular fortitude to come in there. So there's that mutual respect. So you make your way back to the UFC, Jeremy, rattle off the win against Trevor Prangley. Trevor was a tough guy.
Absolutely was. Yeah, he's
Then
very
went
tough.
on to beat Chael Sonnen, the bad guy.
Yeah.
So you're back. I mean, you went back and forth with the UFC a few times.
Yep.
You had the Chuck rematch, which we talked about a little bit there. It was highly anticipated. He wanted his revenge, and you came out. And man, it was a good card too. That was a really good card. We all got together and watched that one. That was Boiling Point, if I'm not mistaken. That was Randy, Mike Van Arsdale, I think Tim Sylvia, and Trey Telligman had a knockdown drag out on that one also.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that was Tim and Trey. I forgot about that fight.
Telligman had the pectoral muscle. For most of the people back in the old days, he fought. I mean, he was always a gamer, man. He always brought it, and he had fought Vitor Belfort back in the day. I mean, he trained with the Lions then, so Telligman was a tough cat to clean after. And I think Tim landed that big high kick on him at the end of the round and dropped him.
That was definitely unexpected. I mean, Tim was a dangerous fighter. He was hard for a lot of people to deal with. He was big. He had long arms. He hit hard. Nobody expected him to throw a high kick.
No, it was right at the end of the round, I think, too.
Yeah, pretty close if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Jeremy, I appreciate you being on here, dude. And I'm not going to keep you much longer. What motivates you to stay in the game right now? I mean, I know you're not actively fighting. You fought 2020, I think, which was.
I did, yeah. I've had a couple of boxing matches. Like, the thing is, like, this is my life. I love fighting. I love training. I love teaching. I don't ever want to stop fighting. I mean, sooner or later, my body will tell me that I can't anymore. But right now, I'm pretty healthy. I have no injuries. I've got nothing going on. But my biggest problem is I'm kind of lazy and I like to eat.
Hey, don't we all, though?
Right. But that's the thing. So, I mean, I'll keep fighting and competing in one way or another, just because I love to fight. I'm not going to be pursuing any world titles or anything soon, but if I can find a new avenue to compete, I will. I started doing a lot of competitive shooting because it's another avenue to compete, and so that's kind of been a big part of my life for the last few years. But yeah, so I mean, I love martial arts. I love teaching. There's nothing better than teaching somebody and then going and watching them go into a fight and excel. Just awesome.
I run a gym here, and I took what I've learned in MMA and weightlifting and stuff, and I've kind of helped kids around here add on some muscle, get faster and stuff for basketball, football, box. They love to do the boxing. They love to hit mitts. They love to learn their combos. That's something.
Yep.
And like you said, seeing somebody that you're coaching or helping get a new PR or learn something that they've been working, that's what it's about, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge.
The last, I've got some fast facts I want to ask you about, man. Just 5 random questions. Let everybody know a little bit about you before we shut her down. What would you say is your favorite band?
Tool?
Yeah, you brought that up earlier.
Yep. Yeah, by far, head and shoulders. You ask anybody. I mean, anybody that knows me can tell you that same answer. And I would love to meet Maynard someday. I've seen him in concert a few times, and I've actually got some friends that know him, but I've never been able to get the right timing to get to meet him. But I would love to meet him. He's awesome.
Well, we talked about how much we like to eat just a few moments ago. What would be your favorite food?
Man, I don't really have a favorite food. Really, like when it comes to just eating, I just whatever makes my stomach stop growling. But I've got a sweet tooth, so anything chocolate, sugar, cake, ice cream, all that kind of stuff is always good. Donuts.
Gosh, man, I'm about ready to run down here and get a peanut butter milkshake if we don't stop talking about it. What would be I don't know if you consider yourself, who's your favorite fighter of all time? Who inspired you, dude?
I don't know if I really have a favorite. I have several favorites. And they're always all the guys, the more technical side of guys. Like I love BJ Penn, George St. Pierre, any of the guys like that. Just the super high level technicians that are well rounded. So any of those guys, I love watching all those guys. Generally, the smaller guys that focus on technique rather than the big bruisers. Those are always my favorites.
And like two of the guys that I've had on previously, when I've asked them that same question, I think two of them actually, Fred Eddish said you were your top, like one of his favorites. I mean, and he was looking forward to this interview, and I think either Guy or Brad, one of them brought you up also, man. But I mean, you're like a fighter's fighter. I mean, that's just the way it is. All right, so what would be your dream vehicle?
Man, I don't know. I'm not a real big car guy. I actually just got a new truck recently. So I mean, I like trucks.
I'm a truck guy myself.
I'm not a real big vehicle guy. Whatever gets the job done for the most part.
Well, I drive a 09 Camry back and forth to work, and I always say I will drive it until it disintegrates. I mean,
yep.
It's got 220,000 miles on it. I'm hoping and praying it just lasts forever. And the last question, dude, that I have for you, well, actually, I got two more. What would be your dream fight if you could have had any fight at any point in your career? Which one would you have loved to have had? I mean, my goodness, everybody.
I mean, I really would have loved to have been able to get a rematch with Frank. Like later on in my career, when my mentality was where it needed to be.
Yeah, you guys could have met up at Strike Force there when he came out of retirement, and I think he beat Baroni. That would have been a perfect time for that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask this last question, and this is going to be a tough one because thinking about the career you've had, I mean, there could be several of these. What are you most proud of in your career?
Well, that kind of is an interesting topic. I've been asked that before, and what I am most proud of is actually not part of my career. So this is kind of a long answer, but
that's fine, my man.
I don't know how to say this without. I don't want to come off this the wrong way, but like I don't think that I am anything special as a fighter. Like being a fighter, like I'm one of those people that thinks the world could lose its professional athletes and not miss a beat.
Yeah.
Right. Like basketball players don't matter, football players don't matter, baseball players don't matter, martial art fighters don't matter. It's entertainment. Who gives a shit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy that people. I'm happy that people enjoyed watching me fight, and I'm lucky that they did because without it, I wouldn't have had a career.
Yeah.
I would have been working a full-time job, and I would have been fighting anyway because I like to fight. But the fact that I've been able to have the career that I've had, I'm fortunate to have that. So I don't really look at like, I didn't change the world as a fighter. Teachers, doctors, police, firemen, military. Those people are changing the world with their job. They're doing something positive for the world. I get punched in the face. That's not anything special. On the other hand, as a gym owner and teacher, I think I do a lot. I'm really proud of the fact that I have taken a lot of people who could not even look you in the eye, and turned their life around and gave them a purpose and a direction and some confidence, and some discipline. So as a fighter, I'm meaningless. I'm a drop of water in the ocean. But as a gym owner and a teacher, I'm really proud of what I've been able to do. I think I've helped a lot of people. I was bullied when I was younger, and I think I've taken a lot of kids and turned that around and helped them work through those kinds of things. And then all martial arts instructors are in that same boat with me. I don't think I'm special in that regard either. But yeah, so that's what I would say I'm most proud of, is not necessarily in my career, but as a martial arts instructor.
Well, Jeremy, that's the big picture. Like you said, all that other stuff, what's it mean in the end?
Right.
When you can help a human being, when you can take a kid and give him the confidence to not be scared to go back to school the next day,
right,
so that he'll feel like he can deal with his issues if he needs to. That is what it's all about, because I know what you're talking about right there, man. And like just working with kids and seeing somebody improve their life, whether they're just losing weight or if they can take care of anything. And that, man, I got a lot of admiration for you on that. I'm glad you told me that, dude.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people that they're like, hey, they'll call the gym. They're like, I'm interested in training, but like I've never done this before, and I'm kind of overweight. I've never done any sports. I'm like, man, you don't get it. Come in.
Yeah.
Come in and try it. You can do it. I promise. You'll love it. Those are the people I want. It's fun to take a high level athlete and turn him into a killer as a fighter, but it's much more rewarding to take somebody that, they can't touch their toes and turn them into, a strong, confident person. Yeah, that's standing upright and looking you in the eye, and that's much better.
Well, Jeremy, man, this has been an honor, no joke. And you may not think that highly of yourself as a fighter. There's a lot of people who does, trust me, because this was one that everybody reached out to me and was like, "Are you really interviewing Jeremy Horn?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to." And I didn't think I thought I was going to be looked at as a liar because we couldn't get the audio going in the front. But man, thank you so much. I know you've got
problem, man. My pleasure.
Some work to do, man, and just keep on because you're doing great things.
Thank you.
I mean, like you said, get to that gym and take care of business, man. And thank you for being on a Wild Time podcast.
Awesome, man. Love to do it again.
Awesome. Take care, Jeremy.
All right. See ya.